The Arctic has always been one of the most dangerous and unforgiving places on Earth. For centuries, explorers set sail into its frozen waters in search of fame, fortune, and new trade routes. But many never returned. Their ships disappeared without a trace, swallowed by the ice. For years, these mysteries remained unsolved, until melting glaciers and modern expeditions began to uncover wrecks that were thought to be lost forever. Today we're diving into 10 real stories of ancient and historic ships discovered frozen in Arctic ice. It started as one of the most ambitious Arctic expeditions ever attempted. In 1845, Sir John Franklin set out from England with two heavily reinforced ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror. Their mission was to finally conquer the Northwest Passage, a sea route that promised to connect Europe and Asia through Arctic waters. But after entering the ice, the ships just disappeared. For over 160 years, the Franklin expedition was one of the greatest mysteries of exploration. Dozens of search parties were launched, but they found only scattered graves, bones, and fragments of equipment. Rumors of starvation, cannibalism, and madness began to circulate. The ships themselves seemed lost forever. But then in 2014, Canadian researchers made a shocking breakthrough. Using sonar, they discovered HMS Erebus preserved in the icy waters near King William Island. 2 years later, HMS Terror was also located, sitting almost perfectly intact on the seabed. Inside were artifacts frozen in time, plates stacked neatly on shelves, furniture, personal items that had not been touched since the 1840s. Evidence suggested the crews abandoned the ships and tried desperately to survive on land. But the Arctic claimed them all. Today, both wrecks are protected as National Historic Sites, still guarded by the cold waters that kept them hidden for hundreds of years. In 1853, the British supply ship Breadalbane sailed into the Arctic carrying food, clothing, and coal to support expeditions searching for Franklin's missing ships. But tragedy struck in Lancaster Sound. Powerful shifting pack ice crushed her hull. The ship sank in less than 15 minutes, giving the crew barely enough time to scramble onto the ice floes. They survived, but the ship was gone. For over 100 years, Breadalbane lay undisturbed under Arctic waters. Then in 1980, divers operating a remotely controlled submersible made a pretty amazing discovery near Beachy Island. Resting 100 meters below the surface, the ship was surprisingly well preserved. The icy water had acted like a natural refrigerator. The masts were still upright, the deck was still visible, even some rigging was intact. And unlike other wrecks that rot away in warmer water, Breadalbane became frozen in time. It's a remarkable window into 19th century naval life and the dangers of Arctic supply missions. By 1850, the search for Franklin had become desperate. HMS Investigator, under Captain Robert McClure, was sent on a mission to locate the missing expedition. McClure and his crew pushed further into the Arctic than most others. Their progress came at a heavy cost. The ship got trapped in ice near Banks Island. For 3 long and grueling years, the crew endured freezing temperatures and dwindling supplies. They were forced to hunt and ration what little food they had. A lot were on the verge of starvation when a rescue party finally reached them in 1853. The crew survived. The Investigator itself was abandoned, left locked in the frozen bay. For over 150 years, its fate was unknown. But then in 2010, Parks Canada archaeologists discovered the ship almost exactly where McClure had recorded abandoning it. Remarkably, it was still upright and intact, its timbers preserved by the ice. The wreck now serves as a ghostly monument to one of the harshest ordeals of Arctic exploration. In 1825, British explorer William Edward Parry led an expedition into the Arctic with 2 ships, HMS Hecla and HMS Fury. The mission was to chart unknown waters near Somerset Island, but disaster hit when the Fury became trapped in heavy ice. The shifting floes pressed so hard against her hull that repairs were just impossible. After days of struggling, Parry was forced to abandon the ship. The crew offloaded supplies onto the shore, creating a makeshift depot on what became known as Fury Beach. They left barrels of food, clothing, and equipment behind, hoping they might be useful to others one day, and they were. In 1833, explorer John Russ stumbled across Fury Beach and used the abandoned stores to survive. Later, Franklin search parties also found and benefited from the supplies. For almost 2 centuries, Fury's wreck lay hidden. But then in 2015, archaeologists confirmed remains of the ship's timbers beneath the icy water. The story of HMS Fury is pretty unique. She was lost to the ice, but her wreckage and supplies helped save the lives of other explorers who came after her. In 1913, Vilmer Stephenson launched the Canadian Arctic expedition with the ship Karluk. What began as a bold scientific mission quickly turned into one of the most harrowing Arctic disasters, though. Shortly after departing, the ship got trapped in drifting ice north of Alaska. For months, the crew watched helplessly as their ship was just dragged further and further from land. Eventually, the pressure of the ice crushed the hull, and the Karluk sank. Survivors described the haunting sight of her masts jutting out of the ice before vanishing under the surface. Stranded on the ice, the crew tried to make their way to safety. Some succeeded, a lot died in the attempt though. In 1929, remnants of the Karluk were located on the seabed, preserved by the cold Arctic water. In 1852, HMS Resolute set sail as part of another mission to search for Franklin's missing ships. Like a lot of others, it soon became trapped in the ice. After 2 brutal winters, the crew abandoned the vessel and trekked across the ice to safety, leaving Resolute locked in the floes. But the story didn't end there. In 1855, an American whaling crew stumbled upon the drifting ship, completely intact, over 1,000 miles away from where she'd been abandoned. The US Navy brought her back to Britain as a goodwill gesture, a symbol of cooperation during a time when Arctic exploration often ended in tragedy. When the ship was eventually retired, Queen Victoria ordered that her timbers be repurposed into desks. The most famous of these, the Resolute desk, still sits in the Oval Office of the White House today. In 1916, Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen launched a new expedition aboard his custom-built ship, the Maud. Unlike earlier wooden vessels, the Maud was designed specifically for Arctic ice conditions. His plan was pretty daring, to allow the ship to become trapped in ice and drift across the Arctic Ocean, gathering scientific data along the way. Although he succeeded in collecting valuable research, the expedition drained his finances. The Maud was eventually sold to the Hudson's Bay Company, renamed Bay Maud, and used as a supply ship. But in 1930, she became trapped in ice near Cambridge Bay in the Canadian Arctic and sank. For decades, her wreck sat in the water, visible beneath the surface, a reminder of Roald's ambitious vision. In 2016, a project was launched to bring the ship back to Norway. The ship was raised, transported back to the country, and is now being preserved as a symbol of both failure and resilience in the story of polar exploration. In 1879, the USS Jeannette sailed out of San Francisco on a mission led by George Washington DeLong. The goal, to reach the North Pole. But once again, the Arctic proved merciless. The Jeannette became locked in ice and drifted aimlessly for nearly 2 years. Eventually, the crushing pressure of the ice destroyed the ship. The crew abandoned and attempted an over-ice escape towards Siberia. A lot of men died during the desperate journey, and DeLong himself didn't even make it back. Decades later, debris from the Jeannette washed ashore on Greenland's coast, proving the immense movement of Arctic ice across oceans. In 2000, researchers rediscovered the wreck in shallow water, preserved beneath layers of ice. Today, the Jeannette remains a powerful symbol of America's early attempts to conquer the polar regions and of the human cost of chasing glory in the Arctic. In 1937, the Soviet research icebreaker Sadko embarked on a mission to study the Kara Sea. Unlike fragile wooden vessels of the past, Sadko was built with steel and modern engineering, designed to withstand Arctic conditions. But even advanced technology was no match for the power of the ice. The ship got trapped in heavy pack ice, immobilized for months. The crew endured freezing conditions, isolation, and lowering supplies while waiting for rescue. Eventually, Soviet aircraft were able to evacuate them, but the ship was left behind, partially locked in ice like a steel skeleton. For years afterwards, scientists and explorers documented the remains of Sadko, a sobering reminder that the Arctic can humble even the most prepared expeditions. Few ghost ship stories are as famous as that of the Baychimo. In 1931, this steel-hulled cargo ship, owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, got trapped in the ice off Alaska's northern coast. Believing she was doomed, the crew abandoned ship. But instead of sinking, the Baychimo broke free and started to drift. Over the next several decades, she was sighted again and again across Arctic waters, sometimes stuck in ice, sometimes just floating around. Villages, explorers, and whalers reported encountering her, like a phantom vessel haunting the north. Her last confirmed sighting was in 1969. Since then, she's vanished completely. No wreck has ever been found, though. Some believe she eventually sank, others think she may be still drifting, beneath the Arctic's ice. The Baychimo remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries of the 20th century. All that said, I've been your host, James, and I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.